Hello everyone, this is Tanmay sir, and once again I'm here today to talk to you, to discuss with you, to have a friendly chat with you regarding the first chapter of our Hornbill. That is the Portrait of a Lady. As you can see, chapter 1 prose, the Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh. So in your Flamingo, sorry, in your Hornbill, Flamingo was class 12's textbook. So as you can see here, in the content page, the Portrait of a Lady is the first chapter because every chapter, uh, especially the first one, has one prose, one poem. So the Portrait of a Lady followed by a photograph. But today's concern is the Portrait of a Lady, this text. So you can find easily in your Hornbill, and once you scroll down, you will see this is the first page of the text. Though this is not the day when we are going to discuss anything about the text, still, for your convenience, I have shown this image, right? Now let's back to the PowerPoint presentation. The Portrait of a Lady. Um, in the beginning of the text, in the beginning of the introduction to the text, I assign you of a homework. And the answer to this homework, your responses, your feedbacks, your independent opinions, all I will cherish, value when the school will be in offline mode, will be in regular mode in the next month, most probably. So that time, I'll ask you again that, do you remember, students, that on the first day I assigned you of a homework? Now, what is the homework? Let me tell you about it. As you can see the title, The Portrait of a Lady. Now, 3 to 4 words which are of similar taste, which are of similar meaning and understanding. The words are portrait, the word is image, the word is photograph, again the word is picture. Now our concern for today is portrait. Now you first need to understand how portrait is different from image, picture and photograph. Okay, so your job, you will get to know and you will make me understand once there is an offline class. On the very first day, this will be my question to you. Now, for the time being, for the sake of your understanding the text, let me just tell you here, the Portrait of a Lady, this portrait is not a is not a brush portrait. Rather, it's a pen portrait. This is called imagery. This is called imagery, which is a feature, or this is a literary device. Imagery. When you create a particular effect in a text while writing the text, that by going through it, by reading it, I get a test, or I can envision something in front of my eyes, that a scenario is getting visible, it gets transparent, is getting evident in front of me, though I'm not looking at any brushstroke, I'm not looking at any painting, rather I'm looking at a text, I'm paging through the book with a text. Okay, so this is called imagery. So imagery is used. The portrait doesn't mean a portrait. Let me tell you, a portrait basically means this part. When this part is being drawn, for example, the great painting of Mona Lisa, you must have seen, you must have heard about, that is a portrait. But if something is a full-scape image or full-scape painting, that cannot be called portrait. Now the million-dollar question is, what does Khushwant Singh meant What does Khushwant Singh mean by portrait here? I'm just making it clear for you that here portrait is character sketch. Sketching the character through pen. Sketching the character through pen. That's why it is character sketch. And whenever I'm just sketching someone's face, I'm not sketching the character. Anyway, the more we are into the text, the more these things will be evident to you, the more these things will be understood by you. Okay, now it's been 3 to 4 times that I spoke of someone as Khushwant Singh. Who this Khushwant Singh is? Let's have a look at this. This is Khushwant Singh. Khushwant Singh is one of the prominent writers ever present with his intellect, with his humor, with his wit, with his words, with his boldness, who is ever present in the scenario of not only Indian English literature, but also in a greater expansion, in a greater scenario. Khushwant Singh has written more than 100 titles, means more than 100 books. You still have a doubt, right? Who is Khushwant Singh? Achha. Though you can Google, though you can get Wikipedia and you get a umpteen information about Khushwant Singh, still, I fail to inform you about certain aspects of Khushwant Singh. He is a politician. Sorry, I cannot say is. He is was. Because last 2014, we lost him. Now, he was a politician, he was a diplomat, now he was a lawyer, he was a journalist, even he was a, now here I can not only say was, but is, because I'm meaning the ever presence of Khushwant Singh. He is a writer, Indian writer writing in English. His write-ups speak of multicultural aspect. Basically, the areas which we prefer to overlook, the which we prefer to sideline, side away. He doesn't get a step back to write about those things because he is very bold in his character. So while you will just go through his write-up, not the portrait of lady, but the other texts, you will see that this is old-looking, angry young man. That's the best example, I think. He was given Padma Bhushan, but regarding one protest related to the attack on the Golden Temple by the Indian armies, he returned that Padma Bhushan. He was again been given to in 2007 Padma Vibhushan. As a journalist, he was the founder member of many groundbreaking newspapers. And right now I can remember of Hindustan Times, which is one of the leading newspapers in India. Khushwant Singh is famous or is well known for his best novel. It's not best written by him, but best acknowledged by people who read it or people who still read it. Let me not tell you. Let me show you. A Train to Pakistan. A Train to Pakistan is a novel that made Khushwant Singh very famous for and lovable for the Indian readers. Apart from Train to Pakistan, amongst all the 100 titles, a few I have chosen out for you to see, and the rest you have to discover on your own interest and love for the writer. It's Truth, Love, and a Little Malice, which is an autobiography by Khushwant Singh. Autobiography means a biography written by someone about himself. Okay? You can again see that Delhi, a novel, which is again a very famous novel by Khushwant Singh. Sahibs Who Loved India, a very controversial and as well as very important document, not only a novel. And the Sunset Club. Sunset Club is one of those books that he is ever remembered. Okay? So as I said, though these PPTs or these documents will be duly shared with you, in the Know the Author section, you can again have a look at Khushwant Singh. And whatever I spoke of till now are all written here. That he was awarded Padma Bhushan, Padma Vibhushan, and he is known for his humor and love for poetry. He writes prose, but he has a great love for poetry. And whenever I'm in love with Khushwant Singh, because I really love to read him, love to know and more explore about him. And whenever I see his text, I find that he is writing in a prosaic manner, but time and again, he takes recourse to some kind of poetic reference, poetic allusion. Not illusion, but allusion. And the last thing I would like to talk to you about that in 2010, I mean 4 years before he left us, in 2010 he was awarded Sahitya Academic Fellowship by Sahitya Academy of India. One of the prominent award or one of the prominent gesture by the Indian literary scenario to award someone or to recognize someone in the public front. Okay, now if I get back again to this part, portrait or the character sketch. Now the question is the portrait of a lady. Who is the lady? Here, this question that bothers me is who is the lady that Khushwant Singh is talking about? Hmm? Then the portrait of a lady. Another question arises that what is the relation between the writer and the lady? This is also a question to be thought of, to be pondered over. Hmm? Now, to break your suspense, I'll tell you this lady is the grandmother. Whose grandmother? Yours? Mine? No. He is Khushwant Singh's grandmother. So the second answer is also very clear with us. If the lady is the grandmother by Khushwant Singh, then definitely the person is Khushwant Singh and the relationship is very much clear, grandmother and grandson. Now in the portrait of a lady, we will try to have a quick exploration of the text, what this text is all about. And to know this, you better need to know about the text in a capsule. So whenever you have this document with you, you can definitely have a look at the text, I mean at this capsule and get to know about it. But let me tell you in a very storytelling manner. The grandson, the grandmother, both of them used to stay together in their village life in a residence. Why these two? Now again one question that then where was the not was rather where were the writer's parents? That's a very important question. Then if they are staying together, then what about the writer's parents? The writer's parents, Khushwant Singh's parents, were out from the village to the city to get themselves settled over there. And this was the time when Khushwant Singh and his grandmother both used to stay together. Khushwant Singh was very little by the time, and they were staying together in the village. So the text is basically divided into certain categories. So if I talk about one by one, then grandfather. Okay, fine. So let me just get a sideline from the village life and more. Why grandfather? The text begins with some kind of some kind of wonder and surprise by Khushwant Singh that my grandfather looked too old in the portrait to have ever had a wife and children. Too old. Even the grandmother was also too old. And they were husband and wife. Had they have children, they can only have lots and lots of grandchildren. So this was the thought. This was the amusing thought by Khushwant Singh. And the first paragraph of the text belongs to this. The first paragraph of the text talks about this. The description of the grandfather, the description of the grandmother. So now coming to grandmother. The grandmother was fat, short, as you can see here, slightly bent, terribly old, wrinkled, and wearing spotless white dress, having silver locks. Definitely, when someone is too old, then definitely these are the features. And old people are supposed to be religious, irrespective of the religion, irrespective of the sect. So rosary was in one hand, that Hari Om Tat Sat, like this kind of beads of the rosary are being counted while praying. So this is all about the description of grandmother. Now again I'm here in the village. In the village means the text had a had two parts, or the text has two parts. In one part, in the village life, how these two people spent time together, quality time. Again, you see in the next slide I have in the city. In the city, when they came back to the city, how their life changed and what are the changes that occurred, what are the changes that took place over there with time. This is to see. So these are the two things we'll see. In the village life, what used to happen? Village life means, as we suppose always, simple life. And there, the grandmother used to take care of the grandson, means Khushwant Singh, in all the possible manner. He was a nanny, he was a granny, sometimes nanny also. But the kind of affection, care, and comfort he tried to provide to the writer, that is Khushwant Singh, it was more of a parents, not less. For example, getting him wake up from bed, getting him ready for school, getting his slate and pencil ready for the school, helping him getting his bag ready, helping him with the breakfast, and not only that, accompanying him by holding the hand. As you can see, when our guardians hold our fingers or our hand, this part very softly, and make us go to the school. So there was a primary school like where the priest used to preach, used to teach the values, the morning prayers and everything. And grandma used to stay there in the temple, praying and praying. Again, both of them are done with their school and the temple work. They come back together. Okay. This was the simplicity of the village life. And whatever I said, these are the things written over here. Now, when the author's parents are already settled over there in the city, they called for these people that now both of you please come to stay with us. We'll all stay together. And that was a point or that was a turning point in their friendship. The little Khushwant Singh and his grandmother had a very good and a very different kind of friendship grown, established between them. But that has got a little bit of breach. What kind of breach? And why in the city life? Because the city life talks about modernism. In the city life, things are a bit advanced, things are a bit progressive. Here, people are busy. People have less time for thinking, praying, or indulging in any kind of leisure work. So that happened. Grandmother shared a room with a grandson, but began distancing from each other. Gradually, Khushwant Singh was also getting younger, also getting old, and grandma is also getting old. Now, grandma needs some care and attention, which Khushwant Singh was failed to provide. because Khushwant Singh and grandma now don't share a single room. Now they have been given gradually different rooms. Now she was disturbed that the education imparted to the grandson in the city did not include teaching about God and scriptures. English medium school and the urban English education or the modern education of the urban life is less about God and scriptures, more about some other ventures. And when Khushwant Singh used to tell that now we have been given a music class, but that music has a problem with this grandmother, because to her music in the urban life means have any kind of immoral associations, something that should not be done. Again, she couldn't help author with studies which she used to do in the village life. She used to feed sparrows. She used to feed stale chapatis to the dogs in the village life. Now, in the urban life, she doesn't get any dog. Now she feeds chapatis to the sparrows. Sorry, she feed some breadcrumbs to the sparrows. But one thing that didn't change with time was the praying, being silent. The more the more she passed her days in the city, the more religious she became. Now, one point comes when the link with author in the city, that grandmother first shared a room with the author, later he got a separate room. He means definitely Khushwant Singh. Then author left for abroad. And again, there is a turning point. Now, though, at least we are in a separate room, the associations are different, but at least we are together under the same roof. That was a consolation for grandmother. But when the author was leaving for abroad, that was again a point of break. For people who love each other, irrespective of any relationship, distance always makes the heart grow fonder. Distance always makes the heart grow fonder. But again, the million-dollar question is, will they have the same feeling for each other? One staying in India, another staying in abroad. All this we have got to see in the journey of the portrait of a lady. This was a parting from the author. This was a parting. And grandmother showed no emotion. He chanted her silent prayers, kissed the author on forehead. That was a kiss of blessing. A kiss over here means fondness. A kiss over here means affection. But a kiss over here is more of a divine blessing, a serene touch by someone who loves you, someone who cares for you. And the author was apprehensive about meeting her again. So the author cherished her kiss because the author could realize, the author did have some kind of feeling inside that maybe this is the last meeting with the grandma. Maybe we won't be able to meet again. Okay. The author left. Now the author's homecoming. After certain time, after spending certain time in the abroad, when the author comes back, that was a day of hilarity. That was a day of rejoice, mirth, and merriment for the grandmother. Grandmother met the author lovingly at station. This was not less than any kind of celebration, any kind of festivity for the grandmother. Grandmother collected the women in the surroundings, and thumped the drum with strength, with enjoyment, with expression, with enthusiasm. And just like the author is not coming back home after having his education or any kind of academic work, as if the author is coming home just as a warrior who fought the battle, who won over the battle. And the very next day, the author came back. After the very next day was the last day of grandma's life. Grandmother, on the very next morning, felt ill. She knew that her end was near. That's why she prayed, and while praying, passed away peacefully. At the end of the text, we get a very touchy scene where we see that the sparrows are mourning. The sparrows whom grandmother used to feed breadcrumbs were also mourning along with the relatives. This is where we have to throw some light about emotion, which we think always are there in human beings, the rational beings. But the animals, birds, they also have their own language, their own terms of reciprocating this kind of relation, this kind of emotion, this kind of togetherness. So when the author's mother, Khushwant Singh's mother, used to came, thousands of sparrows came but did not shut up. Every day they used to shut up. They used to make a kind of a noise, hustle and bustle. But they didn't notice that day when the author's mother offered them some breadcrumbs. They didn't notice the breadcrumbs thrown by the author's mother. And maybe the sparrows could also feel something. They flew off when the corpse was carried away. And this is how the text ends. And we are also left with innumerable questions to think over, to have our views over, to analyze. So I request you all to just go through the text just like a story, not as a short story assigned for your syllabus prescribed in the book. Just go through the story once so that it becomes easier for you to understand the very next day when I'm coming for you with the first phase of the textual discussion. We will have 2 more days. The first textual discussion with the half of the text and the second textual discussion with the second half of the text. And related to question answers and what to do, what not to do, wait for the part 2 of the textual discussion. There I will clarify everything. I'm pretty sure that I could do justice over the text and I could make you all understand what the Portrait of a Lady by Khushwant Singh is all about. I wish you all the very best. Go through the text and wait for my next video coming soon. Thank you everyone. Take care. Bye.